Welcome to Authentically British, the session which asks questions about the kinds of stories, about places and people, or as Tim Davie used to put it without the British moniker, that create the authentic portrayal of what audiences value most. But who decides what that is? In BBC, is the concept of nations and regions defining an othering of nations and regions in relation to London? Is London then seen as the natural home of TV production still? So is the BBC still essentially looking outwards from London? Does that matter? Does that impact on what stories fit that design? While we have many shows set in different cities, a lot of those shows are still made by London-based companies. London-based companies with London-based writers, directors, actors. Representation is not just about what we see on screen. It exists even before the kernel of an idea. It exists in the structure. Who decides? So imagine a co-commission between Northern Ireland, for example, and London, a co-commission with two commissioners. Who has the final say? These are the kind of knotty questions that indies round nations and regions have to grapple with a lot of the time. Is it because you infantilize the local commissioner? Is there a lack of trust? At the table this morning, from the BBC, Hayley Valentine, the director of BBC Scotland. Channel 4's senior commissioning editor and lead for drama, Gwawr Lloyd. Writer, historian, indie owner, David Olusoga. Louise Gallagher from Louise Gallagher Films, indie in Belfast after 23 years of hard labour at the BBC. And Claire Mundell too. Out of the BBC stable, she was the founder and creative director of her own production company, Synchronicity Films. Before we delve in, where do you think we are on how to achieve representation that doesn't other outside London indie sectors from London? Gwawr.
It's just a massive question, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're the person to answer at 9:35 in the morning.
As years on Newsnight, useful.
No, but from a Channel 4 perspective, I think it's very much the focus of what we're doing. 1 out of 3 of the commissioning roles are based out of London. I'm very pleased to say, with my strong Welsh accent, that especially in the drama team, that we are, I think, 3 in Leeds, 3 in London, and 3 in Bristol. And I live in Cardiff. So I think that makes our team very unique, but it really informs the stories that we are interested in and want to explore. And I think it also means that if you know what it's like to not be represented on screen or in stories, that it makes you more likely to lean into stories that don't represent you, but represent somebody else. So I think that is very much the drama team's sort of approach. And then as a channel, obviously we've heard a lot about this yesterday, and Joe Street's work on inspiring and ensuring and making sure that we're all kind of on that path to embracing working outside of London and representing all parts of the UK. So there's a lot of work going on. It's really, really exciting. There's more to do, but that's very much the focus of how we're looking at what shows we're making and what stories we're telling.
David.
I think we're in a world where the problems that we haven't addressed for many decades are now compounded by new problems. But I also think we have a paucity of imagination because we're very bad in this country of doing comparisons with our neighbours. We're far more likely to compare ourselves to America. Britain hasn't got the most centralised media industry in Europe. France is more centralised. Spain is more centralised. So we're kind of mid-table in terms of the level that our capital city dominates. But there are examples that we never really seem to turn to, which is Italy is far less dominated by Rome than Britain is by London. RAI is in Rome, but the biggest commercial broadcaster in Italy is in Milan. Germany, because of its federal history...
God, you've been doing your homework for this.
I'm a historian. Because of Germany's federal history, there are 4 major cities. Because we don't make those comparisons, we have a limitation of imagination. The fact that all of our broadcasters are headquartered in one city is not normal.
No.
We've just got used to it.
But I can remember in the midst of time when we were part of a group which was pitching to make Channel 5 based in Glasgow. And then in the end, it would have been so simple and it would have made such a radical difference. But in the end, cold feet.
Because it's positive imagination, because we don't compare ourselves with other countries. And the power of what's normal is that it becomes unthinkable that things could change.
I'm going to move on now to the idea of authentic storytelling. I mean, I think, BBC dropped the moniker of authentic British storytelling quite quickly and made it authentic local storytelling. What is, Hayley, authentic local storytelling?
Well, I think that conversation about kind of portrayal and representation has kind of never been louder since, I've started this job. I've been in this job almost a year now. And we talk about, representing, in my case, in the Scottish context, the whole of Scotland properly all of the time. So, we talk about being, the media being London-centric, but we are very aware of not being Glasgow-centric. And making sure that our stories are, that we use the term homegrown and really rooted in the place where they are made. And my daughter calls this kind of GCSE drama, but the place being a character in the drama that we are making. And, whether it is Shetland, obviously based where it is, or Granite Harbour, we try and get round the country at Only Child, the place where the programme is, plays a part. And, it comes back to what is our purpose and what are we here for, and making sure that audiences know that their place is important to us is absolutely central to our purpose, and to make people feel that we are, and again in BBC terminology, for them is really important.
But actually, Louise, in terms of growing the sectors, is portrayal enough to say, well, actually, we are very good at what we do in this area? Or do we actually need, the PSBs need to actually actively work within the sectors to grow indies?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, with Blue Lights, we could only have, we got a great support from the BBC based in Belfast, and our commissioner is based in Belfast, Heather Larmour, and at the time the Blue Lights was series, it was Tommy Bulfin, who is from Limerick, even though he was based in London. But it's vital that the BBC is there, and I've worked with them for 23 years, so I had a good basis of what good stories are by working in local radio and local television and talking to people. So,
but what is the point of PSBs if they don't play a major role in the culture and the economy?
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about the economy as well. I mean, they have a role to play in growing sectors.
Yeah, they definitely do. And the problem we have is that there's only a small percentage of that is given to Northern Ireland. We're 3% of the population, and we've only got 3% of the pot. So it means that we're all scrambling for that small pot of money, and it feels as if there's a box ticked here, does that mean that my peers in factual entertainment or documentary don't lose out on a commission, even though it's a brilliant idea?
So essentially, you have a lot of production companies in Northern Ireland, but a lot are struggling. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a one-person production company. I don't have anyone else working for me. I've had to work. I also work for Hat Trick. But yeah, I think there are a lot of them are struggling, but it doesn't mean that they're not producing really great ideas. It's just they've got, and there's people working in the industry there a lot longer than I have, and have been making incredible programs for years, and they're just tenacious and keep going with it. But they just keep coming up against that barrier, and I think it's funding.
It's funding. Claire, from the point of view of Synchronicity Films, which has been, it looks very successful, but it isn't. Well, it is successful. I put the comma in the wrong place. I was going to say, it isn't easy.
Yes, I've made it all up. It is not easy. No. I remember Nancy Braid, who was formerly head of production and business at BBC Scotland, responsible for delivering, initiating the growth in Nations and Regions way back in the mists of time. I'm embarrassed to say 1995 or 96 maybe. And when I stayed at the BBC for 10 years, and I loved it, but I closed my eyes one day and I thought, I think I want to do this for myself. I think I want to open an indie. Nobody's making drama in Scotland from Scotland. Where are the Scottish scripted production companies? There were lots of film producers, but there was no one making television. So naively, I thought, oh, I'll do that. So, went to Nancy Braid, told her of my great big plan, said, I think I'm going to go. I had a full-time job. I would have had a final salary pension by now. I could have had a long career in the BBC, and she was like, you're mad. It's going to take you at least 6 years and £500,000 to get this off the ground. And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? I'll have a commission in 6 months. So it's 2025, and I set up the company in 2006, and it was a long old road, so it's tough. But if you really want to build sustainability in an area, I think you have to build it from the inside out. And I also think that's how good, authentic portrayal and representation is best developed, from the inside out. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Graham Armstrong's The Young Team.
Yep.
Possibly the most important book to come out of Scotland since Trainspotting. I'm saying this in every opportunity I get. But I'm still amazed by how many people outside of Scotland, or even outside of Glasgow, don't know about this book and how important it is to young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are socially, economically deprived. And to me, the fact that we are sitting in an office in Govan and we are looking, because we're committed first and foremost to Scottish talent, Scottish stories, Scottish voices, not exclusively, because we also make international shows like the Tattoos of Auschwitz and The Cry.
That's the other thing, you don't pigeon.
No, and that's a really important thing that we should come to. But, the fact that we're sitting there, we're just closer to material that, not by dint of any, great genius or anything, it's just because we are in the place, we're of the place, and therefore we're more likely to find jewels and gems that you might not find in other parts of the country if you're, not
and
from
to
there.
that point, you'll find the jewels and the gems, and it will be, by and large, people resident in Scotland who will be the DOPs, who will be the directors eventually. Because it's the point is that you don't grow the sector unless you grow everything in the sector, everything in the production.
Well, the fact
and you don't fly in someone that's regarded as an A-list director just because somebody says, oh, I just don't think there's the talent in Scotland. There's only Douglas McKinnon.
I think the thing is, like, it's a people business, right? And creative people want to work with other creative people that they trust, they admire, they know can deliver. Wherever possible, I think if it's just inevitable that you'll look to your own networks first and foremost. But I think that that there is a tripwire there as well, which is that you don't want representation to become a ceiling of the things that companies in the nations and regions can do. And, we don't consider ourselves a Scottish company. We're just a company
in Scotland
with an address in
Scotland.
Can I pick up on that point? I think we all know that we hire people that make us feel confident, because it's a really frightening thing making a television program. And everyone will have been involved in a program that goes wrong, and you never want to go back there. But that speaks exactly to what you were saying, is why these things, the creation of companies and sectors outside of London needs to be organic, because your sector, your network is a Scottish network. The London dominance has been so difficult to shake is because those networks have followed people who've come to regions and come to nations. That sense, I mean, I still hear people talk about a London producer as if that is a different species, a different level of skill set. And I've been in, I live in Bristol, I work in Bristol, my company's based in Bristol. I have been in discussions where somebody said, we need a London producer for this.
I've been in discussions too with that as well.
Kirsty, can I just come back to you on what you were saying, Claire, about you being one of the first scripted indies in Scotland and coming from Wales and worked in the industry there for a long time. Before, there's an incredible scripted community and talent and writers and directors and actors in Wales. And actually, I think when Doctor Who came to Wales 20 years ago, I can't quite remember, it was brilliant. It expanded, but the talent was already there. A lot of the people who went on to work on Doctor Who were I started on Pobl y Cwm, the Welsh language soap opera. They were all working there. They had
Yeah.
They had the ability. They grew it, they expanded and trained people up, but it wasn't this kind of miracle that happened overnight. There's a deep passion, and a lot of people working there have now are making huge contributions.
Yeah.
But I think there is still a problem that writers and directors are often not from where shows are made.
I think though that,
can I just bring in this statistic? Last year, only 5 of the top 15 Scottish producer by hours commissioned for BBC were headquartered in Scotland. The remaining 10 were headquartered in London. Is that a healthy position to be in?
I think there's a couple of things about it, that lots of production companies, for all sorts of reasons, have parent companies that exist elsewhere. And that's understandable. I love that, Claire has built her company from scratch and is holding on to it, but that's not always the case. What we're looking for in the BBC, and the second thing about it is the hours point, because a lot of what we make is, high cost, lower hours. The hours stuff is not quite representative of what we're doing. But I do think that, what we're looking for is companies
that doesn't publish the value side of the equation. The BBC doesn't tell us that.
Well, we publish what we spend. We don't publish it on individual things for commercial reasons, obviously. But what we have is companies who are absolutely committed to being here, that feel Scottish, that have big Scottish bases, that are hiring a lot of Scottish people, that are working on content that feels absolutely of the place and portrayal. They may have a parent company elsewhere, and we don't distinguish against those things. We're not going to punish somebody because they have a company that's based elsewhere.
You won't be able to make a commitment, because and I want to come on to the second part of the idea of what that commitment might be now. But just on the point, for example, and there's been this big row about traitors. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand? You've got a deal now that Traitors has to invest, has to grow talent in Scotland, because they've got a massive contract.
Yeah, and they are. The thing with Traitors is that it's a particular format where there probably wasn't that expertise in Scotland when they started. That is different from something like, we don't make those kind of reality programmes until recently. Now we do.
But we do.
Now we do. But there wasn't a Traitors type format before. In drama, that is different, and we make a lot of programmes where, for example, Shetland, a company which is not based here, but we spend 6 months of the year in Shetland. We employ a lot of people. It's absolutely end-to-end Scottish.
But I think the idea, I just got to pause for a minute, because the idea that we don't have people in Scotland that can make a reality show until Traitors came along is actually quite extraordinary, because of course we do, because people work on all different kinds of shows.
Yeah,
and people have got talents that are able to move on from a reality show to a game show. I mean, if you are a production manager, or if you are a spark, or if you are someone that makes carpentry in one of these castles, of course people can adapt.
Yeah, and people are adapting, and the number is growing. So, Traitors is a great success. It's clearly Scottish. It's bringing huge amounts of money into the economy, and, that there is a risk that, Traitors could be made anywhere. It's brilliant that it's being made in the Highlands, and I'm very, very glad to have it. But we are developing the talent through that. We're putting in trainees. We're developing people through the system. And as the series go through, you'll get more and more Scottish people working on it.
And that's all levels in Traitors. That's like exec, senior producers, everybody.
It's going through the system.
I would just want to talk about Fiona Campbell's comments in the opening debate yesterday. And I'm sorry, this is not just about BBC. This is a broader point. But this is a particular issue here. The BBC tried to have a regular beat of shows that tell British stories from right across the country, touching, when they do that, on many companies across the UK. And that IP is retained in the UK, and that money has a multiplier effect in the UK, and that's what we're proud of. But the point about the value of IP in building a sector, is an argument Screen Scotland's been making for years. The importance of BBC and Channel 4, particularly as PSB's commissioning in Scotland and allowing IP, therefore, to stay in Scotland and grow, that's an issue, Claire, isn't it?
Well, I think IP generation is the root of everything
Yeah.
if we're in this for the long term. And we have been talking about this since the Hatch Report, which was 30 years ago. So we must be in it for the long term. But, IP generation and ownership, that is, for me, where it begins, right?
Yes. So if, for example, in your view,
Yes.
there are companies headquartered in London who do big and brilliant chunks of material in Scotland, but are headquartered in London, the IP stays with the headquarters, essentially.
Well, it does, yeah. And I mean, look, we're in a competitive business, and it is, you know, it's open season, I think, at the moment. It's even more difficult because of what's happening in the wider world, the challenges in financing, the reduction in the US investment. So we're all scrabbling for fewer opportunities than ever before.
So you know, it is a competitive business, but why have a quota?
Well, I mean, the quota was a structural intervention, wasn't it?
Yes.
To drive growth, to drive sustainability. And that, I mean,
I are you concerned, for example, Louise, if we didn't have a quota, then there would be some backing off? Are you what do you think about the quota? Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing?
I think it could be better for our region, most definitely, because we've got the stories and the talent there. I mean, and in terms of IP, I mean, Blue Lights, I don't own my own IP anymore. In order for me to get that show made, I had to, you know, partner up with a more established and experienced TV producer. I'd never made television drama on that scale before, and luckily it's worked out. But
so you didn't share IP?
No.
Because you had to co-produce with
Yeah,
a bigger
I had to
company that is
co-produce with a
headquartered in London.
Yeah.
Probably.
And
Well, no, they are headquartered in Belfast and London.
Oh yeah, of course.
But
Yes.
but I, you know, as an independent producer, there was no way I could have ever have kept that myself. And
no, so you had to give it.
Can
I just come back?
I mean, is there enough?
Can I just come back
Yeah.
on the quota though? Because I think that, look, spend in Scotland, 70% of spend the BBC's committing to in every production in Scotland. Fantastic,
Yeah.
because we have a huge freelance workforce who are dying out there without, you know, opportunities. And if we don't look after those people, those skills will disappear, and we ironically will end up less able to deliver against these targets. But I think the two things have to go hand in hand, for me anyway, and I would say this because I'm a producer based in the nation, but the substantive base and the spend are two key things. And I think that there will always be an ecosystem that is a balance, inward investment and indigenous growth. But we just have to be careful, I think, especially in the context of international drama right now, where to get drama made, typically, and we're in the middle of one right now with Australia, where we have to take money from other territories, which means we are not always going to be able to spend 70% in Scotland because we won't be able to make an international drama from Scotland. Now, we made The Cry many years ago, and that is an example of that kind of challenge there, is that how do we balance delivering against those targets whilst also being from Scotland to the world, which is what we try to do with the stories we tell.
And that's your USP.
We want to tell stories that are rooted here, but that travel globally.
Yeah.
So I imagine that one of the pitches for the job that you made was that you would grow drama, which of course, and you know, we all know now that River City is going, but by the time you'd said River City was going, you already had a lot of dramas in mind. So the idea is it to grow that drama base in Scotland from productions rooted in Scotland, not necessarily about Scotland. I mean, some don't need to be about Scotland, obviously, but that actually the talent making, you know, the camera crews, making these. Do you put a stipulation on that, you know, you really want to have more drama in Scotland and you want people to be here making it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a couple of things. Just on the quotas, I think the quotas are a useful thing to have. My view is they should be a floor, not a ceiling. You know, we beat our quotas on both hours and on spend, you know, in recent years. And, you know, I would say this, but, you know, there's no shortage of ideas in Scotland. Give me more, and we will beat those quotas by more. The more things will get delivered. On the drama strategy, and, you know, just to address the point, I've done it before, but we made the decision in Scotland to stop making River City next year based on the audience decline, based on changing audience habits. It was a difficult decision, and I understand it's particularly difficult for, you know, audiences that loved it and also continue to love it, and the people working on it. So, you know, this was not easy. However, from a Scottish perspective, you know, we realised that the way that audiences are going, we've seen it with, you know, big Netflix dramas based in Scotland recently, 6-parters, you know, they require a lot of money, and as you say, it can't just be our money anymore. We can't exist in isolation. So the money that we are going to, you know, bring from River City, it's not a saving. It will all go into big dramas. from my perspective, they need to be about Scotland. That back to that portrayal point, I want to tell the stories of Scotland, but we need to be telling them not just to ourselves, but to the whole of the UK and to the world. You know, back to
And
the
if they're
basic
authentic,
principle.
people will
Yes, they may come for the crime, or they may come, but they'll stay for the, you know, the authenticity and the detail and the nuance of where that thing is set.
So we don't want to be too Scotland-centric here.
Well, I feel the same. I feel the same way about the stories I want to tell about the place where I'm from.
So what is authentic portrayal, Louise? When you did it in Blue Lights, and it was so, and you were telling an incredibly complex story in Blue Lights, because there's nothing like the PSNI. I mean, there just isn't. And so tell me about authentic and how you make sure it's authentic. And as I say, it's just not what's on screen; it's how it's made.
I think it came from the creative team. We didn't, you know. Stories about Ireland and the north of Ireland over the years have always been from another person's perspective or interpretation. And I had never watched a television programme about the place I'm from with people in it from where I'm from. And I always had this thing. I mean, I grew up loving police shows, cop shows, American TV shows, Cagney and Lacey, Hill Street Blues. And, the unique thing, the thing about the PSNI, they are the only police force at the time within the United Kingdom and Ireland that regular response officers are carrying personal protection weapons. And I just kept thinking, but that's really interesting. And I started talking to police officers, and then the thing that landed with me, it's the people behind the uniform. These are people who have made a decision from wherever background they've come from to ultimately most of the people I spoke to wanted to help people. And I just suddenly, because of the years of working in that world and telling stories, I said, that's the story. And they would come back and say, one person in particular kept saying, you'll never guess what happened today. Mm-hmm. And I thought, there you go, there's the basis of it. And I just started gathering those stories. And it's just, I'm blown away by how it's resonated with everyone.
Well, it's phenomenal, but how easy was it really to get it commissioned? I mean, did you try on your own before you actually came together with a company?
So I took the idea to the BBC in 2015, and Stephen Wright was the commissioner then, and he said, look, this is a really great idea. I want to make a cop show. You want to make a cop show. Just go in, think about the way in was really important. And what I had been talking to, the officers I had been talking to had all been through Garnival, the training centre. So left it for about 3 years. This is about 2015, 2018. Was making a feature film in London. Stephen he'd left the BBC at that point, created Two Cities TV. And he said, look, what have you done with that idea? And I said, nothing, because it was, trying to keep the lights on in the house and, living. And I thought, but I still know what I want to do. And she says, well, let's just do it. So very quickly, it just happened. We got the writers on board with Declan and Adam. He had been working with Declan and Adam on another show. Yep. And I was very clear on what I wanted to do. We pitched it to the lads. They weren't 100% sure, but I said, look, I know we can do this. And I just knew it. I don't know what it was, just this conviction. I just knew it was going to be good. And once we started, it just, the floodgates opened. And then we took it to Tommy Bulfin. And
Tommy Bulfin
He was the commissioner at the time with Piers Wenger. And we were in the Merchant Hotel. There was one of these BBC things. And
No.
But he just put, and I was there all ready to go and pitch. And he just said, yeah, just go to script. And
and the other thing was, for Channel 4, authentic portrayal, honestly, the switch was flipped with Dairy Girls, wasn't it? Like, overnight.
Yeah, but I think authentic portrayal should be universal, right? That there's stuff in Dairy Girls, yes, it's very specifically said, it's very kind of about a really clever way into reflecting a period in time, but it's the key relationships are between, they're growing up. It's a coming of age drama, comedy actually, but there's so much in there that helps you relate. But actually, and you enjoy the authenticity because you're in a world you might not know or you're curious about, but you love those characters. And we've got to talk about Gavin and Stacey here because that is the ultimate in bringing two cultures together And it's character, character, character. You love them, they're relatable, they're funny, they're real.
Yeah.
There's no huge conflict there. It's all about how people feel and adore each other. And I think that actually that is such a sort of North Star for everybody.
Yeah.
And also understanding that, yes, they're kind of quite, and I can say this, you know, very Welsh, and have all their quirks, but we love them for it, and it's not embarrassing, and it's not like, oh my gosh, can you believe they live like that? It's, oh my gosh, most people live like that, and it's kind of understanding that, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Derry Girls broke the
Derry
mold.
Girls the same.
Yeah.
I must talk about long-running drama and soaps and continuing drama, actually, because they're how I got into the industry. It's how I'd say almost all the team in Channel 4 got into the industry. It's how Sally Wainwright, Tony Jordan, and obviously all the soaps and the continuing dramas are mostly based out of London. So not only do you have portrayal, but you have writers that can work where they're from because they're there. You've got crews, you've got directors, all working in that area that they're from. And the show like Hollyoaks, it's, you know, it's absolutely, it's Liverpool.
Yeah.
And how passionate those actors are about where they're from and the stories they're telling. They're telling universal stories, and they're actually groundbreaking as far as representation and going there first. You can do that in a long-running drama. You take that away, and actually, most of the time, most of that year, there's not much production happening in Liverpool. There's not much production happening in, you know, it's really key to keep everybody
I think that's
working.
interesting because you want to make a point too about the English regions, that the regions are struggling.
I think they are, but to go back to the, if I may, to the point about quotas, everything I'm hearing shows that quotas have worked, that there's still work to be done, there's still a catalytic point we need to reach, whether you're building a generation of people at all those skill levels and all of those roles. But we wouldn't have got here without quotas. And the other debate I'm involved in, obviously, is about ethnic diversity in the media. And I think we've succeeded, or we are more successful when it comes to nations and regions than we are when it comes to diversity, because we haven't had quotas. So I think it proves the point that, you know, if Marcus Ryder is here, but this is what Marcus has been saying for like 5 years, is, you know, this is the demonstration of why quotas are effective.
I think in Scotland we can see the embodiment of that, because there are now, I'm not saying it's easy, we're all, you know, battling in that environment for commissions, but there are now multiple successful, sustainable scripted companies in Scotland, and that didn't exist until the quotas came in, because it created a market.
But BBC on the quotas business, it's about qualifying, it's not about portrayal, not about representation, it's not about origination,
It's both, isn't it? So, you know, we're clearly focusing on portrayal in more ways than we ever have been. But, you know, we talked earlier about it's not everything that you do. And if you want to make a programme in Scotland that's about Auschwitz, or you want to make a quiz show in Scotland that's not got portrayal in it, that's also fine, because you are a company who happens to be based in Scotland, and we will support you to do that.
But the numbers don't back up in terms of origination, do they? That, you know, there's not, what I'm saying is that it's still the case that London companies make more for Scotland by hours than Scottish companies.
In a very narrow viewing of things, then in terms of, you know, ours is not really the way in which we are spending our money. You know, the big ticket items are about, you know, drama, 6 hours long, spending a lot of our money in those kind of areas, and in factual, that we're not really thinking about things in those terms. So there's a much wider way in which we view things. And to the point, I mean, I think it's difficult if you're a production company in Scotland, because, you know, clearly, if you're, you know, there's a lot of unemployment, there are a lot of freelancers who are not in work at the moment. And I don't want to be the last man standing. I don't want to hold up the whole industry on my own. But we have kind of two messages. One is, you know, we will support you, and we will, you know, with the young team, is, you know, it's a punt that we have taken, and we are really hopeful it'll be a great success. But I'm also saying, if you want to come here and make stuff, then brilliant. I want that too. You know, our doors are open to companies to coming here.
Well, let's talk about portrayal now, because we are talking about the engine of authenticity. Depends on, you know, who's making it, frankly, and the subject matter. But in terms of portrayal, David, you have got a particular issue that you're concerned with about, for example, you as a presenter. Tell me about that, what you're asked to do and then what you're not asked to do.
Well, I think there's an historic issue in the industry about pigeonholing and about about the way, again, it comes back to what's normal, what is normalized. I mean, we don't do very well by every metric on socioeconomic diversity. 8% of people working in the industry come from what we used to call unskilled jobs, we now call routine jobs. The representation of people at the highest, the elite in television, is about 5 times the level of private education as it is in the background population. So we've had those background problems and that misrepresentation for a long time, and I think that does infect the way portrayal ends up on our screens. But I think there's another problem, which is, London's good at being authentically London.
Yeah.
And if you have 50% of an industry based in a city with 13% of the population, a city that in all sorts of ways is culturally, historically, unlike much of the rest of the country, there is an inbuilt structural problem. I wrote in one of my books about the 2012 Olympic opening ceremony and how beautiful and wonderful it was. 4 years later, we had Brexit. And everyone was completely surprised. The problem is they were the London Olympics, not the British Olympics. And that was a authentic representation of the spirit of London. If it had been the Middlesbrough Olympics, it would have been a different opening ceremony and we would have seen a different country. Having half the industry in one city that's unlike the rest of the country is an inbuilt structural problem that we haven't escaped.
So should commissioning be spread, as it is more for Channel 4, around?
Absolutely. I have pitched an idea. I've been in the industry for 27 years, and I have pitched once outside of London, and that was to one of your colleagues in Bristol. And that was the first time I'd ever pitched outside of London. And on the class point, I've said this before from this stage as well, we sometimes use portrayal unintentionally to disguise structural inequalities in this industry. The example I always use is my programs are normally the announcer saying my program's coming up, announces it in a regional accent. The person who commissions it has an RP accent. We camouflage the structural imbalances and the inequalities in that industry through portrayal, not intentionally very often, but portrayal camouflages what's happening in the rooms and the companies behind the scenes.
What do you think about that, Warren?
Wow, yeah, that is fascinating, actually. I'm really pleased to say that is now not my experience at Channel 4, and I think it is because of the genuine work that's being done to kind of, I guess, decentralise. But, and actually, just to make a point as well, our HQ is in Leeds, not in London. So just coming back from that, I'd be better say that. But, but that changes a mindset. Yeah. It's kind of, it really does. Yeah. And I think we're in the room as a team where we can tell brilliant stories to people who are based in London and do make decisions and actually change what they, like us being in the room, me being in the room, my colleagues being in the room, and not, like none of us actually are from London, even if they're working from there. And we can tell stories about where we're from, and that's kind of, that can change a decision.
Yeah.
It's really important.
I had the most horrific statistic yesterday. Well, not almost horrific statistic, that's kind of overstating it. But it was pretty bad, working with Smack the Pony. And somebody was saying the latest statistics on women writing sitcoms. 11% of sitcom writers, people commissioned to sitcom. That would transform things, just 11%. Give more female writers a chance to do sitcoms.
I ran a development program through Hattrick. I run their development office in Belfast. And I thought, where are the women writing comedy in the north? So I had a little pot of money left from another development program I had been doing with BBC Northern Ireland, and I wasn't giving it back. So I decided, I said, where? So I sent out, I contacted a load of women who were writing.
A lot of cash
in the pocket, and I got 30 women writing comedy. Got their ideas, whittled it down to about 12. Got it down to 6, brought Lisa McGee on as a mentor, and we got 3 were then taken to script. One was produced to a short, and the other 2 they really liked that they gave one of them another script commission, which we are now developing, and I've just put it back into the BBC. So they're there. You've got to just go and find them. And as producers, it's my job to go out and find them and develop them, because they are funny, And you know, Lisa McGee, we knew that Lisa McGee is an incredible writer, but there's many funny women in the north of Ireland who are brilliant, right? They've just never been given that opportunity, and I'm passionate about giving them that opportunity.
And I think also be broad-minded. Like, you can think that this pool of people are the only ones who can write something, but lean into something that feels risky and uncharted territory. But if you're not from that pool, you're much more likely to go, oh yeah, no, I'm really interested in that story. I want to hear that story.
But is there still a resistance? Because I can't remember what report it was in, but there was certainly a line from Channel 4 that producers outside London are simply not good enough. That yeah, tell me about that. That producers are not good enough.
That is not what we believe.
Not good, too small and not good enough.
Yeah, well, that is definitely not my experience, and I think...
Was that a mistake to say that?
I would say it's a mistake to say
Good.
that.
Right.
Because I think that's not my experience. That is not Joe Street's experience in Scotland.
No.
That is not our experience.
Right.
I think the challenge was to say, bring us your best ideas. Like, you know, bring brilliant ideas that we want to make.
But basically, yes, but the kind of reasoning behind that was because your ideas aren't good enough just now.
No,
I think that's
I
what
don't
people
think
took
so.
away from that.
I think there's a problem that actually, because companies that don't get regular commissions, they don't have the money to develop an idea to the level more richer companies can. So you get a really flashy kind of pitch from, and well worked out, and a lot of people have been paying to present it to you. And then a smaller indie, who an indie doesn't get as much funding, can't do that.
Yeah. So therefore then what you do, which is not happening now, is you actually give them development money.
Yes.
And where's the Channel 4 development money? I mean,
Drama we've got.
Well, there is...
No, but in drama, but I'm not talking about drama just. I'm just talking generally about helping people in locales.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I can't go into detail on other genres anyway, but there's a big kind of investment from our skills team into, I think we've doubled it to 10 million to train people up. There's a brilliant scheme that we're in part of now, which is training up junior commissioning editors outside of London. And that is, they'll come in for 18 months into different teams in Channel 4 to kind of, and it's not just about training them to be commissioners, but it's about helping kind of inform what channels are looking for when you pitch to them. It's kind of making it a level playing field, making sure everybody knows what the secret is to get.
I mean, the interesting thing is, in a way that, you know, people should be teachers before they're head teachers kind of thing. For commissioners, the idea of actually being at the coalface for a few years before you become a commissioner.
100%.
And it's why things like the writers' room are really important, right? We bring people through the system on shorts and through the writers' room, the comedy room, the drama room, and we've got, you know, some of our big announcements have got writers on them, you know, Only Child and councils have got writers on them who came through that process. You don't come to this fully formed, and we need to keep supporting.
Well, can I just say that's segged into a question here, which is just amazing. It's like being on television. River City gave new writers a way in to learn their craft and prove themselves in drama. With that gone, and most six-parters tightly authored, how are new Scottish writers supposed to get experience and show they can deliver?
I mean, I think I've sort of just answered it, that we are moving away from one piece of content. We're not moving away from that commitment. So we have committed to having training programs attached to our dramas. We are absolutely audience focused, so this is where the audience is going. But we know that it is our job, and, you know, part of our purpose is to bring people through. So, you know, we commission things at different price points. We commission shorts. We bring people through the system in different ways, so that, as I say, you know, you don't land fully formed onto a 6-part drama, but we've done that work in the BBC through the system.
David.
Can I just say, I think one of the reasons why that's so important and so great to hear is because one of the big structural issues of the dominance of London is that the option of moving to London, which historically has been there, has now disappeared. Yeah. You as a young person cannot move to London unless you're rich. Now, that was not the case for the second half of the 19th century. Another history stat, if I may. London's population got back to its 1939 levels in 2015. Yeah. For most of the late 20th century, London was underpopulated and there was excess housing. It was no more expensive than most cities. So that our access route to the industry was basically move to London for a few years.
But
That's
this is,
closed,
honestly, this
so
is
we
Dick
need more work like
Whittington's
Hayley.
fault. I mean, this whole thing is kind of in muscle memory of generations in order to streets paved with gold and opportunity. And in a sense, what we want to do is federate the United Kingdom so that actually they're literally our headquarters everywhere. And just before, I'm going to bring the audience lights up so I can take questions. On the question, because it's one I don't understand, if you have a co-commission with Scotland and London and from two commissioners, who gets final say?
We have parity. I mean, we are similarly.
But parity doesn't help.
We have about 15 commissioners, and I'm going to get the figure wrong, but sitting in Scotland, working on local content, working on network content, and working together. The truth is, as we know, I don't think the blocker anymore is opportunity. The blocker is money. And in order to get these projects made, and in order to compete with the world of where drama is going, we have to have that. We are also working with externals, and this is the same question. You know, if you're working with Sky New Zealand or Hulu or whoever it might be, HBO, we have to agree. But it doesn't come down to, which I think is sometimes the perception, London has the final say. You know, if my head of committee is sitting right there doesn't want something, it doesn't happen either. We have parity in these decisions.
Great. Right, okay, lights up, please, because I've gone over my time a wee bit to take questions, so I need to get questions from you. And I'm going to take the first question here with the mic here, and is there anyone over this side for a second question? Any second questions over? We'll take the first question. Could you say who you are, please? Thank you. Oh?
I'm very loud, don't worry.
No, we need you to be louder.
That's it.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Sarah Kennedy. I'm here from Custard TV and Made for TV podcast. I can't tell by the accent, but I'm from the Midlands. To go back to the importance of soaps, BBC's Doctors was such an incredibly fertile training ground for new writers, actors and crews in Birmingham. It is sorely missed. It feels like the BBC's presence and therefore interest in the Midlands is getting smaller. What more can big broadcasters do to support young talent, not just writers, particularly when long-running TV shows are cancelled?
Well, my temptation of it...
yes. Because I spent almost a year in the Midlands last year, and I loved every minute of it. And actually, to the class point we were talking about earlier, I went to, just as an anecdote, I went to the screening of This Town, where we had 400 people from the Midlands, and the show demonstrated something which I think it presented working class life as a positive thing. You know, it was a drama, so not everyone was having a great time, right? But they weren't not having a great time because they were working class. It made these tower blocks and housing estates that normal people live in look beautiful and fine and normal. And in this audience of 400 Midlanders, when their housing estate or the one that their mum used to live in came up, they were cheering and clapping because it was a positive thing. So I'm a massive supporter of how the Midlands is represented on TV. With Doctors, I mean, you know, like everything, we have to follow the audience. The key, I think, and the key that we kind of learn from here is having more things to go to. And I think the Midlands is absolutely part of a conversation in the BBC at the moment as somewhere that needs representation. We can't stick with formats where the audience is pulling away from them. Clearly, that would not be good for value for money. But I'm not being Scotland-centric in this. I really care about parts of England that need that representation too. And I think, you know, Stephen Knight is a force for good in this realm, but he's not the only man in town, and we're working really hard in the Midlands.
Can representation also be a trap, David?
I think it can. I think, you know, Gary Young's written a brilliant essay that's been published as a book on the pressures, the burdens of representation. When it comes to ethnic diversity, I think TV has, one of its reasons for failing is a belief that the job of non-white people is to tell non-white stories and that they have no other interests, no other identity. And particularly, we live in a world where non-white people are being stripped of their class identity. And that's one of the big dangers we need to resist. The construct of the white working class is stripping class identity from non-white people.
Well, to that point, when I watch the BAFTAs and the production teams go on stage to collect their award, I'm always struck by how similar the teams all look. Perhaps they're diverse, but I can't see or hear it and I don't feel it. Will this ever change? Louise?
Well, coming from Northern Ireland, it's a very, I mean, it's not as diverse as the rest of the UK, but there are brilliant companies, for instance, Afro Mike Productions, who are here in the room, who run an amazing company in Northern Ireland. So, you can only tell the stories that you can tell from my point of view, and that's the way I do it.
You
But
can only
and
make that work if you
Yeah.
develop the supplier base
yeah,
in the
Yes.
nation.
and I mean, and also growing up where I grew up as well. I mean, I've never heard stories from the Indian community, drama stories from the Indian community in Northern Ireland, from the Chinese community in Northern Ireland. I'm always actively looking, where are those writers? You know, so it's changing, but it's changing slowly. And our crews are very diverse now as well, are getting more and more diverse. But I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to write the story of someone from an Indian community growing up in. I'm not that person, so I need to find the person who can write that, and I'm actively doing that.
At Channel 4, coming back to kind of quotas and guidelines, there is so much we're doing on the front of, in front, but also behind the camera when it comes to disability and diversity, and the difference it is making. And I tell you also the difference those guidelines are making is empowering people who need to employ people they haven't worked with before. And not in the usual crew they go to. It really empowers them and us as commissioners to have those conversations confidently and ensure that we can ask for the right things and bring people on a journey. It really makes a difference to surround yourself with people who are from those specific backgrounds or have a knowledge of disability and just say, this is how you do it. And then you learn. And then next time you do it yourself. It's brilliant.
Question from up here. Could you say who you are, please?
Hello. Oh, is that on?
It is
Hello,
on.
my name's Mystery Day, and I'm a writer and an actor. I was really interested in this whole subject of authentically British, and David, absolutely about the intersection between global majority and notions of authentic Britishness region. I'm based in Cornwall. I'm writing a eco-comedy, and it's set in Cornwall. It's set at the coast, actually, to keep it open, but it's set in Cornwall. I'm a mixed heritage person. I couldn't find a production company in Cornwall that is also mixed, because that's what I wanted to go with. So I came to London for that, and happily Big Deal Films are working with me on it. I was shocked to hear, like, the thing about the IP issue, in that, and it's interesting, like, I think I absolutely agree with you that IP is central, isn't it? Because for me as a writer, the idea is, why can't we hold on to our IP so that then the work would be considered to be coming from Cornwall, right? Do I have to use, you know, do you have to hand over to production companies that's based in London?
You could reinvest it in a production company in Cornwall.
Yeah, something like that. You know, that's one of my questions. The other thing is more of a statement, I suppose, which is absolutely, I was in conversation with a commissioner yesterday about this project, and I got kind of worried, and it was fortunate someone helped me with that thought, that the content, like you say, it wasn't about Cornwall as such. You know, I suddenly felt like I had to have that representation, and in fact, the pressure to do that, it was like, and he was saying to me, no, you're based in Cornwall geographically, so you're in the region. But that notion that we have to represent the story of, sorry, I wasn't talking into the mic, represent the story of, rather than me writing about something I'm interested about. I find that very interesting. It's not really a question, I just think it's kind of feeding into
an observation.
What you're saying.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? We can take one more. Yes, here we have Douglas McKinnon here.
Okay, sorry, just going to... Hi. It comes down to, in the end, ideas and money. That's the only two things that were actually interesting for me. I've shot in Belfast and Bristol and Cardiff and sometimes in Scotland as well. And I think, I wonder if the question of money is kind of simple with the BBC in particular. Should the licence fee just be kept in Scotland and in Northern Ireland? The licence fee that's generated here, should it just be kept here?
Hayley.
I mean, we're now at the point where we weren't 10, 15 years ago, where we spend most of the licence fee raised here in Scotland. It comes back to us. But, you know, we also love the World Service. We also love network programmes in Scotland. And you know, all of that mix comes together.
And you get studios money as well that you spend, it comes back to you.
Yes. So, you know, it's a slightly corporate answer, but I do think that we are in a position where we can spend the money raised here in Scotland. There's no shortage of ideas in this room and elsewhere. But we're almost there, and I think we are in the other nations as well, that most of the money raised in those nations is spent in those nations.
So I think the proportion of studios money comes back to you, the right proportion.
we raise money in Scotland. At the moment, we're spending, I think, 90% of it in Scotland. 90% last year, about 89 this year. It kind of depends on when things land as opposed to when they're made.
But there's still 4 times as many jobs in London as percentage of the population than there are in any other time. I mean, it's 48% for 13% of the population. It's always going to be over.
We now make 60% of our content outside of the M25, so we are kind of ahead of the game, and we're moving in the right direction.
Quick point from before we start to wind up.
What would be transformational about that? Transformational would be that if, maybe not all, because I take your point about that money contributing to other BBC services, but if a portion of that money in the nations and regions was properly, fully devolved to decision making, full commissioning decision making in that nation or region, then I think you would see transformation in the federalisation of production and ownership of IP, and it would create a structural change that would enable companies to base themselves. Because actually the elephant in the room, one last thing to say is, we can't forget that when you're making a drama, you're asking a commissioner to, put millions of pounds on the line, put their reputation on the line, and that, there's a lot of responsibility behind that. But sometimes it's not about necessarily an assumption that the talent isn't there, but the big worry is the deliverability there? Because to deliver a show like that takes years to build, and sustainability takes years to build. And it needs structural change to enable companies to grow from the ground up in a way that they can be trusted to deliver, because you can have the best freelance talent in the world, but if you don't have producers on the ground who are able to develop that talent, then we're never going to get there.
If you do not want to work with Synchronicity Films, I, for one, will back you as the next BT of the BBC.
But we do have both. We have our own budget, and as I say, that the building of talent often comes from BBC Scotland's only money. The cost, we all talk about drama inflation, but it means that that's increasingly difficult. But we do have our own budget. So if, for example, Network, whether you think they're London or elsewhere, do not want a project, we can still commission it.
Yeah, you can. And Louise, I think, does an amazing job with that, and she's very entrepreneurial with allowing another route for things to happen. But if that 8% of licence fee, if 4% of it was actually commissioned in Scotland, straight to the network, that would be...
That's the takeaway. That is a takeaway from today.
I think also the opportunity is if you don't give somebody the opportunity and take that risk and trust them with it, it's just going to go around in circles and we'll never get there.
Okay. I have my duty is, because it's 50 years of the Television Festival, to ask each of you for your favourite TV show. Because I'm cheering, I'll go first. In case mine's nicked, because I've got about 8 here. But what about Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland? I mean, honestly, incredible. David?
It's very, very specific and very, very history, I'm afraid. In 1991, the BBC broadcast a programme, a one-off called The War That Never Ends. It was produced very, very quickly, and it was great British actors, including Ben Kingsley, reading passages from Thucydides' Histories of the Peloponnesian Wars, and it was created because that night the ultimatum for the Gulf War ran out. And it was to show the timelessness, and the conversations between delegates from Athens and Sparta sounded exactly like the delegations that were between America and Iraq and the EU. And as that program ended, they played a cacophony of sounds from the diplomacy we've just heard. And then that night the war began. It was one of the greatest moments in the history of the BBC.
Oh, God.
Is that not your one?
I've written an academic paper about it, so I'm disadvantaged.
Thanks, David. Okay, so whenever I was asked this question, the first thing popped into my head, and I'm just going to say the first thing that popped into my head was anything David Attenborough has made over the years, because I was watching that in Derry on the TV, and, just thinking, right, there's a big world out there, and I'm going to flip and we'll go and see it. And just everything David Attenborough and the Natural History Unit in Bristol, just banging. Everything.
Yeah, great. Claire?
The first thing that comes to my mind is Mary Mungo and Midge, actually.
Yeah, I loved that.
And there's a reason for it, because I grew up in a high-rise flat, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, so does Mary Mungo and Midge. But I have another one as well, which is which is The Crow Road, the adaptation of Ian Banks's novel, which I think was back in the 90s or something. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh, I'll go along the Crow Road. I live very near to the Crow Road. And it was such a classy, impressive production of a Scottish author's wonderful novel that it made me feel that making high-quality international drama from Scotland was possible, and it was a real inspiration.
Gwawr.
I'm going to really off-brand here, and it's kind of very neutral, but in between us. Yeah. Just because it made me laugh, and it reminded me of all those boys who made my life hell at school, and made me better understand them.
Hayley.
I'm going non-Scottish, which is controversial. I'm going Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the classic, you come for the story and you stay for the characters. You know, Tommy Shelby arrived kind of larger than life. Polly Gray is an amazing character. And having been in the Midlands for 9 months, the impact that had in Birmingham, I mean, you cannot turn a corner in Birmingham without seeing a mural of Cillian Murphy, which is also nice, obviously. So, loved it.
Please thank our panel. Thanks very much indeed. You're brilliant.